Hey, my friends, it's Chaya. Welcome to session 5 on the infinite relationships of a Jewish woman. Today, we're doing something a little bit different. It is Purim week as we are making this live recording, and there are 1,000 crazy things going on. So instead of doing a live session together as a group, we are making a recording and then we're going to share it with everybody so we can all multitask and you can listen and focus on your relationships while you are preparing for Purim. Sound good? Okay, so let's go ahead and jump right in. And I'm going to put on my glasses so I can see. Please forgive me. Okay, no. So, as you know, the focus of this class is learning how to unleash our inner greatness to elevate and transform the ones that we love most in this world. In session 1, we defined our relationship map. In session 2, we conducted a self-analysis to define our starting point. In session 3, we discussed creating a strategic plan for revolutionizing the relationships with your family members and loved ones. And with something this important, see, here's the thing. This is why we want to stop and actually take the time to do something as crazy as put a plan together. Because with something as important as our loved ones, literally the most important people in the entire world to us, we don't want to just leave it to chance and hope it works out, right? So that's what session 3 was all about. You see, this very famous phrase, it is what it is. By the way, I hate this phrase. It is what it is. Okay. But this phrase, it is what it is, it's a death sentence for relationships. No, you see, relationships actually take a lot of hard work. And if we don't care enough to nurture them and keep them healthy and strong, then they will absolutely die. So that was all of session 3. In session 4, we introduced the concept of using personality styles and love languages to transform our relationships. And just as a very quick recap in an abbreviated nutshell, remember the personality assessment that we studied is DISC. D are your dominators, your the doers, the delegators. They're usually the ones that are going to take control of a situation. They're bossy, they're quick to make decisions. Those are your D's. The I's are the influencers. They're in the middle. They're the life of the party. They need people. They're social butterflies. They are extroverts typically. Okay. S's are the steady, slow and steady. They're motivated by safety. Slow and steady. They're peacemakers. Steadiness and security is very important to them. And then C are your conscientious ones. They're calculated, they're critically minded, they're paranoid of being wrong. They really need to know, the 12th step before they take the first step, right? So we're all a blend of some of these. Usually we have a primary and a secondary, and we're learning how to blend these together in our home to create peace and harmony, especially between marriages or between a boss and an employee or between business partners. It's very important that we learn how to speak the language of the other person's personality so that we can connect with them at their level. And then the 5 love languages that we covered last week: acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, words of affirmation, and physical touch. And then, as I shared with you last week, the Jewish course that I took actually added 2 more: food and empathy. And when we learn to communicate in the language of our loved ones, then we make sure that they're actually able to hear and receive our love and our connection. Okay, so that was all session 4. And today we are going to cover 3 skill sets in session 5 that we need to affect long-term sustainable results. Are you ready? Here we go. The 3 skill sets are: number 1, communication skills; number 2, life skills; and number 3, leadership skills. Now, when I list these three skills, it's almost laughable because a person could literally spend 8 years getting a PhD in each one of these categories and a lifetime mastering them. Okay? So clearly, we are not going to become experts in any one of these three today. However, the point of our conversation today is to create awareness so that you can decide if, when, and how you want to begin the journey of digging deeper on behalf of your family and your loved ones. Now, I also want to point out again that, dun 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 dun, the work is with me. The work is with me. You see, if I invest in myself through upgrading my communication skills, my life skills, my leadership skills, guess what happens? Literally every area of my life improves. My whole life gets better. Why? Because I got better. And that's what this is all about. So let's take it from the top. Before we even drill into these three areas, I first want to define what is a skill. So we're calling these three skills we need for our relationships to thrive. So what is a skill? A skill is actually, if you look it up, Wikipedia, Google, whatever, the official formal definition of a skill is a proficiency that is acquired or developed through training or experience. I'm going to say it again. It is proficiency that is acquired or developed through training or experience. Bottom line, it can be taught. It is something that can be taught, which means it is something that can be learned. So this is different from a gift or a talent. Those are gifts from Hashem. But even gifts and talents must be honed, practiced, and developed into greatness. Okay? The good news, though, is that I don't have to pray for a gift of communication or a gift of leadership or a gift of life skills. It's not a, oh, divine providence, I got it or I didn't. No, 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 no. These three areas are skills that I can acquire first by becoming aware that I need them, that I want them for my life, and then rolling up my sleeves and getting to work after I figure out how to go about doing this. Okay? So let me ask you something. Would you say that purposeful, intentional communications were taught to you in high school? Probably not. Okay. Probably not even in college unless you took a specialty class or, a leadership course or a business course in grad school. However, these are skills that the entire world needs to thrive. But like most important things, they're actually not taught by modern society. Now, as a quick little sidebar, do you know why this is the case? Because modern traditional schooling was created to keep the masses as the workhorses of society. Okay? The fathers of traditional schooling were purposefully aiming to keep the masses of society in the middle, stuck in mediocrity. This was actually the objective. The father of traditional schooling said his goal by the time a student went through all their years of schooling, the goal was to stamp the will out of all the pupils. This is why when the bell rings, you're programmed, move to the next station of the assembly line. They did not want you to think. In fact, John D. Rockefeller is quoted to have said, I don't want a nation of thinkers. I want a nation of workers. Okay, but that's a whole different sidebar tangent, rabbit hole that we don't have time to dive into today. But my point is that it's really no surprise that we aren't naturally and systematically taught the skills that we need to thrive in life. It's all a part of this illusion of darkness that comes with galut, with exile. We are in the darkness of exile. And our job as the daughters of the king is to search for the light, find the light, work to fan that flame within ourselves so that our divine light radiates outward, and then we can begin to shine the light for others. So, these three skills that we're going to cover today are literally flashlights. They are practical tools that we can use to illuminate the darkness in our lives and in our relationships. So, the first skill we're going to cover is communication skills. Now, this is all about learning to speak the language of the other person. In fact, everything that we learned last week when we were looking at love languages and personality styles is so that you could learn to communicate in their language. Now, I want to share something with you that it almost sounds like common sense when I say it out loud, but as we know, common sense really is not so common. So here we go. Communication is the root of every relationship. Communication is the root of every relationship. Now, on the flip side of that, I speculate that poor communication is the root of the breakdown of almost every relationship. Because remember, even relationships that end with infidelity, etc., infidelity doesn't start in the bedroom. It starts with a text or a quick smile or a message or a conversation to where a person starts taking their focus and attention off of one person and on another. So they shift the focus of their communication as well, right? Because in for the good, the bad, and the ugly, every area of our life, personal relationships and professional relationships, even casual relationships, people that you're passing on the street, communication is verbal and non-verbal. How you look, how you act, how you treat others, not just what you say or what you write. Okay, everything that we're doing is a mode of communication. And by the way, empathy and active listening are both critical communication skills, and they have nothing to do with talking, right? So, what we're going to look at today is we're going to look at not just casual communication, but I'm going to point out and share with you some of the most critical pieces and subcategories of conversations, if you will. And I want you to make notes or mental notes on which one of these you feel that you could use some focus on, some upgrading. In fact, an easy thing to do is to list these out and then grade yourself, like rank yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. Okay, so active listening. Okay, when somebody else is speaking, when your spouse or your kids or a colleague is speaking to you, are you fully engaged in listening to what they're saying? Or is your mind already on what you're going to say next, how you're going to respond? You're already preparing your comeback or the next statement. Okay. How about empathy, where you're not necessarily trying to solve their problem or fix whatever it is that they're saying, but you're just connecting, you're listening, you're validating, you're being there, being present for them so that they can feel heard and validated. How about negotiations? Okay, negotiations are a huge, huge skill. Okay, by the way, my husband says that Americans are terrible negotiators. And as a white girl, I am a completely terrible negotiator naturally because I grew up with parents that were very non-assertive people. So I was not taught how to ask for what I want. I was not taught to advocate for myself. I was taught to accept full price, retail price on everything. We have a joke in my house, I pay full retail, and my husband refuses to pay full retail. So we're always at odds about how to spend money. Okay, but the truth of the matter with negotiations is that at the end of a good negotiation, both sides should feel like winners. Okay, successful negotiation is not where you take advantage and one side loses and one side wins, not in modern day elevated Gaulidic situations. Okay. In successful negotiations, both sides should feel like winners. How about managing conflict or conflict resolution? Okay. Also, as a kid, I was not raised in an environment where you discuss conflict. In fact, we just brush everything under the rug. Everything, everything, everything. I mean, the rug was like to the roof in my house because we did not discuss anything that was difficult or complicated or heavy with emotion at all. So, how to manage conflicts in our home. Oh my gosh, this this is something that should be required that we go into a marriage with a manual, but it's not because everyone brings the baggage of how conflict was addressed in their home with them, and it's an unspoken rule that goes into a relationship. Okay? Crucial conversations, how we're going to deal with crucial conversations in our home are so key. And these are, again, not skills that we are taught really anywhere in the world. Okay. So let's talk for a minute about if you, let's say, for example, that you have been working through a situation with your spouse, just by way of a good, simple, easy example. And if there's a subject, let's say it's a delicate subject, and it's come up before in the past, let's say you know it's a hot button, okay? Anytime you need to begin that conversation or reintroduce it again, like circle back to it, okay? Or you want to begin a new conversation and you know that broaching this topic is going to be sensitive. How can we do that with peace and confidence? Remember, you're the neck that turns the head. You're the thermostat of the energy temperature in your home. So, what I'm going to invite you to do here is to really work on repetition, repetition, repetition. This is how your skills are going to grow in this area, but always, always, always pause before you do it. This is not a type of conversation that you just run into and you shoot from the hip. Timing is everything in these conversations, making sure that you're able to be fully present, that they are able to be fully present. They're not irritable, they're not in a rush. You are none of those things, right? But even more important than the timing is the plan of the conversation. So here's what I'm going to invite you to do. Just like you're strategically planning your life, your relationships, your goals, etc. And when we're doing a strategic plan, we start with the end in mind. So that's what I'm going to invite you to do as well with these crucial conversations is to start with the end in mind. What does a successful outcome of this conversation look like to you? And by the way, it is okay to write this out and map it out. And if it's something that's really important to you, it's okay to even have these few things written down. If it's a very crucial conversation, it's okay to have these things written down, even when you go into the conversation with your loved one. And you can say, this conversation is very important because you are very important to me. And I know that we've got a lot to unpack here. And I know that there's a lot going on. And because I care so deeply about you, I want our relationship to thrive. I want you to thrive. And so I took some time just to write down the things that feel so important to me. And that will actually go a long way most of the time because they will see that you really care and you're really investing not just in the conversation, but in the relationship as a whole. Okay? So then as you start with that end in mind, that ultimate outcome, and then, work backward and map out and take the time to write it down because it's going to allow you to have flow with your thoughts and not get so wrapped up in the stress or the emotion of the moment that you get yourself lost. And even when if the emotion become the conversation becomes very emotional, you actually have the frame of reference with this piece of paper that you can redirect yourself and you can redirect the conversation. Okay? Also, in a crucial conversation, it's okay to take a break if you need to. If you need a minute just to breathe or walk and say, I love you. This is getting very elevated, and I want us to be able to rise above the intensity of the motion. So let's just take a minute. Let's just breathe. Let's take a couple minutes and we'll come back to the conversation. It is okay to do that. Okay. How about another element of crucial conversations? We alluded to this, we mentioned it very briefly in our last session, and I told you we would circle back to it today. Apologies. Okay. Apologies are such a critical component of genuine connection and deep long-term relationships. So, what does a genuine apology look like? Okay, we know what they feel like, right? We know when we're receiving a genuine apology, and we also know when we're giving a genuine apology, right? So, what does a genuine apology accomplish? Well, from my perspective, it does a couple of things. First of all, it restores an open flow of communication because we know what that feels like uh, when we're mad, when we're angry, when when we're at odds with a loved one, whether it's our kid or our parent or a sibling or a spouse, that anger, that resentment, it really puts a wall up between our communication, does it not? Oh yeah. So it when we have a genuine apology, one of the most important things that it does is it restores an open flow of communication. Okay. The other thing that it does is it restores an open flow of energy. That simply by allowing the energy to flow. Now remember, you're the thermostat in your home, right? So you know what it feels like. I know when I'm ticked at my husband or I've ticked him off in some way, I can feel it. I can feel it in my gut. I can feel it in my chest, and I just can't stand the energy in the air because it's so tense. It's so thick. It's like it's cut off the flow. So a genuine apology really does restore that pathway of communication and it restores the flow of energy. And remember what I shared with you last week that it's been said that the first to apologize is the bravest, and the first to forgive has the most peace, and the first to forget is the happiest. So these are such important elements that come along with apologies. Now, also, depending on the dynamics of your relationship, it could be that you're in a situation where, depending on your personality style, one of you may always be the quicker to apologize, and that's okay. Okay. It's not about who's going to apologize first, and it's not like a negotiation where you're in a standoff. It's not a strike, and you're thinking that whoever speaks first loses. Has v'shalom, God forbid. In fact, it's much more elevated to be the first one to apologize. So don't feel bad if you're the first one to apologize. Don't let that be another layer of resentment is how come I always have to be the first one to speak? How come I always have to be the first one to apologize? Look, sister, if you are out there working on yourself to where you can forgive quicker and you can move on and you want to put it behind you and you don't want to waste another day, another minute holding this negative energy, good for you. Seriously, like pat yourself on the back. Okay? That is nothing to feel like you have to come with your tail between your legs. Now, maybe there are some times that you got to come with your tail between your legs to apologize because you've done something wrong, but the quicker you do it, the better. And remember, even if you're apologizing or forgiving, that's not making you a schmata. It's not making you a doormat. It's allowing you to take back the reins of the direction of where you're going. And you don't have to accept being treated poorly in order to forgive someone and move on. I can still have very healthy boundaries and hold those boundaries to protect myself and to remain with the dignity as the daughter of the king while still forgiving and choosing a path to move forward. Okay? Now, I actually want to share with you a couple of suggestions if you decide that you want to dig deeper here. And I'll share all these in the follow-up resources. But I want to share with you a book that is called, a couple of books. One of them is called Crucial Conversations. Oh my gosh, it is such a powerful book. It's called Crucial Conversations. And then there's another one that's called How to Listen So Your Kids Will Talk and Talk So Your Kids Will Listen. Also huge. And then there is a fantastic PDF online that's called The Art of Listening. And then if you follow Simon Sinek, who is a leadership thought expert, he has some fantastic YouTube videos and podcasts on the art of listening. It's fabulous, fabulous. So I'll put all those into the follow-up email, but I highly recommend digging into any one of those if this is an area of your life where you would like to upgrade your own skills. Now, remember, growing our communication skills is a lifelong process. But being aware of this as a necessary skill in your toolbox is a huge step in the forward direction and momentum of all of your relationships, personal, professional, casual, you name it. Okay. Skill set number 2, life skills. Okay. I'm hesitant to even lump these into all one category called life skills because it must be the largest category on the face of the planet. It's like a glacier, okay, where you have like this much sticking up above sea level and then, a whole mountain range under sea level where you can't see it. Okay, but for the sake of conversation and explanation, I am gonna lump them into this category called life skills. So what are life skills? This is a general term for pretty much everything you need to know in life. Okay, a Google search tells you that they are the foundational skills that improve an individual's prospects for a happy, productive, and fulfilling life. Now, these are all broadly applicable skills that they transcend any specific career or lifestyle or parenting role. Okay, so I might have parenting skills, or I would have professional skills or trade skills. These are skills that really apply across the board to anybody and everybody that will help you improve the quality of your life, your happiness, and your overall relationships. Okay. Now, the crazy thing, like mind-blowing crazy, is that most people go throughout their entire life after, say, high school or college when they get their one said diploma without ever having a thought that they may need to develop additional skills to thrive in life. Okay, this is actually why personal development is a genre of books instead of a core component of life. Y'all, this is crazy. Okay, but here are some examples of life skills: self-awareness, critical thinking, creative thinking, decision making. Decision making is a skill. Do you know how many of us we slip into overwhelm every time we have to make a decision? Okay, problem solving, effective communication, like we just mentioned, interpersonal relationships, empathy, coping with stress, coping with big emotions. Okay, 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds don't know how to manage big emotions. Most 40-year-olds don't know how to manage big emotions, including me on some days. Okay, time management is a life skill, money management, emotional management. All of these are critical life skills that most of us are never taught, and we never even have the light bulb moment. That my life would improve if I invest instead of living on Netflix at night if I actually carve out time to invest in some of these areas. So I want to share with you how this first came into my universe, because I can assure you it was never a thought of mine in high school or college, and even in the early days of my graduate school. But while I was actually in graduate school, right before I actually withdrew from my MBA program in Southern Methodist University in Dallas, I had just started my own business. I was an independent contractor in sales. So I was technically working for myself. I was my own boss. I set my own hours. I had my own, tax return. I had like technically I was my own boss, but I was contracted with one specific company to sell their products at the time. Okay. And so I had gone to a conference where I was surrounded by other entrepreneurs, new entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs. And I was at a conference in downtown Dallas where I was surrounded by 10,000 other people that were also selling this particular product. And I was up in the nosebleed section as a new entrepreneur, and I had no skills, no status, no clout, no success whatsoever, no experience. And I was watching the upper echelon of highly successful people, entrepreneurs, business women. I was watching them, collect checks and prizes and share their success tips and come on the stage accepting awards and rewards and prizes for their, millions of dollars that they had sold, and then that they had gone on and they were becoming self-made millionaires as a result of their success in sales and building successful teams, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And as I sat there in the nosebleed section watching, I could only see their faces because of the Jumbotron. I mean, they were like this high to me, up in the nosebleed section. And as I was watching them, it's like I had this out of body experience where I could see like two different paths I could take in life. Okay. One path is where I'm saying, wow, it really would have been nice if I had, look at them. They're so successful. Look how well they can communicate. Look how well they are at building a team. Look how wow, they're talking about all this money. How do they manage their money? I mean, if I knew that many people, if I could network, I would be successful too. Well, how would I manage a team? Wow, they run an office. How do they do all that? I don't have any of those skills or gifts or traits. So it was like sliding doors. One path for me as I was having this out of body experience in the nosebleed section at this sales seminar was, wouldn't it be nice? I wish, if only, if only God had given me and endowed upon me all these amazing gifts that he'd given these people. Or the other path is, let me sit here and make a list of every single skill, trait, quality that I can see and hear them speaking about. Let me make a list of all the traits that I would need to develop in order to become successful in business and life. And then I can make a decision. So behind door number one is, well, I guess it wasn't meant to be. If God had made me as gifted and skilled and qualified as them, then I could be successful too. Or behind door number two is, well, sister, you got a lot of work to do if you want to create success in your life. So we better get to work. And I did ultimately choose door number two. And I did make a physical list of all of the skills that I thought I would need in order to move myself from the nosebleed section to the stage. And I invested 3 years of my life where I just put my blinders on and I did nothing else for 3 years. I literally blocked everyone and everything else out. If they weren't my immediate family, I didn't party. I didn't travel. I didn't take on hobbies or extracurricular activities. I did almost little volunteering. I did almost nothing else for 3 years, except for I put myself through my own personal street smart master's degree PhD program into these life skills. And it changed my entire world and the trajectory of my future. So I share that with you because I want you to know that from personal firsthand experience, it works, but it takes work. And I learned through that process that every ounce of time, effort, and energy that I invested into myself was a direct investment in my family and in my future. Now, of course, that was over 20 years ago. Okay. And adding to our repertoire of life skills is a never ending process. Okay. Of course, I've continued to learn and develop new skills. And every year I'm like, wow, how did I live my whole life without that skill? How did I just now wake up to the fact that I was like missing a big piece? Because we're a constant work in progress, right? But being aware of this is a necessary skill in our toolbox, and it is a huge step in the forward direction of all of your relationships and the richness of your life in general. Now, you can't master everything overnight. So, what did I do? I literally prioritized. What were the areas of my life where I was hurting the most, that I was suffering the most, where I was like the lack of these skills was causing the most immediate damage to my life? I started with those. Okay. And then, so it was like, it was like, stop the hemorrhaging, right? And then I moved to which ones I thought were going to make the biggest impact. And then I would just continue to prioritize and reshuffle. And sometimes I would work on a couple at once. Sometimes I would have to pause and go, okay, some other big thing has like, it's like the game of whack-a-mole, right? You get rid of one and then something else pops up. So I would have to put something on pause and go work over here because that's what life is. Life is messy. Okay, so there's no perfect curriculum for life. We got to lean into it and we got to kind of wrestle our way through it sometimes. But no one is going to do that for you, my friend. Okay, so that's why once we wake up to this concept of personal development and growing and mastering these life skills, it literally, just this awareness alone puts you in like the top 1% of the 1% of humanity because you're living purposefully and intentionally, and you're not living by the seat of your pants, and you're not living, driven by Netflix. I mean, this is crazy. Do you know anyway, what is Hollywood? Hollywood is full of people who are out there pursuing their dreams while you're sitting on your couch watching them pursue their dreams instead of pursuing your own. It's sick. It's actually sick. Okay. Skill set number 3. So we've touched on communication skills. We've touched on life skills. Skill number 3 is leadership skills. Now, we've mentioned this category of leadership skills a few times already during this series. And we're going to dig a little bit deeper right now. Okay. When people hear leadership, we typically jump right to like CEOs or speaking on big stages, but those actually aren't the most common uses of leadership. I want to share with you again my very favorite quote from John Maxwell, who is considered by many as the world's foremost authority on leadership. He says, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Sometimes you're influencing big groups. Sometimes you're influencing small groups. What I have learned from my own personal experience of speaking on stages of 10,000 people and then coaching, individuals, private coaching individuals, you can motivate the masses for sure, but you move people one on one. So, leadership, I might be giving a speech, even if I'm on a big stage, but if I want to connect and move somebody, those conversations happen one on one. Okay. Now, I want to share something else with you. Leading others is one thing, but learning to lead ourselves is a whole different ballgame. And here's what I can tell you, at least for me, you, you are the hardest follower you will ever convert and win over. This is about learning to parent yourself. That's really what self-leadership is. Okay, think about it. Why am I calling it parenting yourself? How many times do we look at our kids or our spouse or our partner and think, why is this so hard? I mean, can't you see it? It's right there in front of you. Like, duh, it's so obvious. And yet we continue to fail and flop in the same pits over and over and over again in our own life, in our own way. And please know, as I am sharing this with you, I am speaking to myself. Okay? This is not something that I have, none of these categories have I fully mastered. And I know that I still struggle with a few key things. And I'm like, Chaya, how many times are you going to fall into the same pit? Why? Why do you keep failing with this one thing over and over and over? But you know what? New level, new devil. As soon as we have victory in that one area, we will have another test, another opportunity to continue to learn and grow. Because remember, as long as we are still here, eating, sleeping, living, breathing on this planet, it means that God has more for us to learn and more for us to do, more for us to give, and more ways in which we can grow. Okay? But how does leadership relate to thriving in your relationships? Well, here's what I can tell you. If you want to leave all of your relationships to chance and just luck and human nature, you don't need to invest in leadership. However, if you want to be a creator rather than a consumer in your life and in your relationships, then leadership is required. Remember, leadership doesn't just mean speaking from the front of the room. Leadership is often the strategy that happens behind the scenes. Okay, I shared with you this a session or two ago. The Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, required that all of his Hasidim, all of his followers, his students, he required that they invest half an hour per day thinking about the Hinnuch of their children, strategically planning how to invest in their education, their growth, and their development. Now, y'all, that is true leadership. Thinking about how to invest in your marriage, mapping out the kind of relationship that you want to cultivate. That is true leadership. Thinking about your own life, your life purpose, your mission here on this earth, what Hashem wants you to accomplish while you are here, and what you want from yourself. That is true leadership. That is what we call leading the army of one. And remember, before you can lead others effectively and masterfully, we must first learn how to lead ourselves. Now, I can share with you that I have an entire library of books on leadership. I have a whole list of them. I'm happy to share it with you if you need a starting point. And I will share a couple of them with you in the follow-up resources from today. But when we start to really look at everyone around us in this perspective, not from an ego place, right? Not like, oh, I'm putting myself on a pedestal and now I'm your leader. Now I'm going to lead you. Okay, nobody is going to respond well to that. Okay, this is about servant leadership. This is about leading from behind and below, not from above. If I'm leading from behind, right, it's saying, here we go, we're coming together. And I'm like rising waters lift all boats. So if I'm coming from behind, I'm taking them with me as we go, right? If I'm leading from below and rising waters lift all boats, I'm elevating everybody around me as I elevate myself. Okay, so this is not about fake it till you make it or me becoming a manager. By the way, I just want to also sidebar quickly. Managers and leaders are two very different things. A manager is what is called a situational leadership, which means that somebody is required to follow you because their job requires it. If they want to get paid, they have to follow your instruction. That's a manager. Okay. A leader is someone that you follow because you want to. It's someone that you want to be around because you know that being around that person makes you better. You feel better about yourself and you become a better person by being around them. It's also been said as one of my favorite definitions of leadership is that a leader is someone who helps people see as far as they can imagine, and then they help them see a little bit further. So if I am taking on the responsibility, if I am accepting the life mission of servant leadership from Hashem, that's what it is. You are here, you are blessed to be a blessing, right? And like we talked about in some of our Power Hour classes, we are meant for abundance. You, as a daughter of the King, are meant for every type of abundance: emotional, spiritual, physical, mental, financial, you name it. But not so that I can rack up trophies, but so that I can make a difference by pouring and giving into the lives of others and by being an abundant vessel to shine my divine radiant light. If I don't have abundance, it means there's things that I got to work on. It's a lot of it's my bitachon, my trust, my reliance on Hashem, and rewiring all those broken, toxic thought processes. And that is a key component of this continued journey of leadership. Why is that? Our Rebbeim, the Chabad rabbis, they said, if you know Aleph, teach Aleph. That means if I learn step one, I can start to share step one. I don't have to have the whole alphabet mastered before I can start to share with my neighbor, before I can start to share with my friend, right? So the little baby bits and pieces that I'm learning, as I learn that piece, then my entire family can be elevated just that little bit more, just that little bit more. So we are all babies on this journey. And the more we know, the more we share. The more we receive, the more we pass along. And that's one of the most critical pieces of abundance, by the way, in the human psychology of rewiring our brain for abundance is that if we live in a mode of scarcity, we're going to clog the pipes. So there are so many billionaires that are actually stressed, broken, poverty-minded people because they are completely living in paranoia every day of losing all their money. And if I am afraid of losing and losing what I have, and I have like a death grip on something, there's no flow in my life. So I'm creating an energy of stagnation. This, by the way, is also very true in our relationships. You may have heard it said that anybody that is meant to be with you will find their way back. And if we are hanging on desperately, it's creating neediness. It's creating this energy that pushes people away, right? So all of these pieces start to braid together and weave together as my awareness starts to expand to this beautiful universe and understanding that, holy cow, there actually is a manual out there. Okay, all of this is given in Torah, but as we find teachers that we can relate to and connect to, then we can start to dig deeper and start to understand it more and start to lean in and just start drinking up all of this knowledge and wisdom that's out there. And the more that I soak up, guess what happens? Then I become like a sponge and I can squeeze that abundance, like I can squeeze that sponge out over my life and I can literally irrigate everything that I touch. It's such a beautiful journey and a process. Now, if I were still living with old awareness, I could be very overwhelmed right now because I would think, oh my gosh, there's so much to learn. How could I ever do it? Forget it. Why even try? I'm never going to get this too much. But here is what I want you to know. Being overwhelmed is a choice. It just means that I have not developed coping mechanisms to thrive in my world of the things that are happening around me. It's a skill. So just like I can choose to be overwhelmed, now typically it's not a purposeful choice, it's a reactionary, subconscious choice of our freeze, flight, fight, animal brain, my reptilian brain. I could also choose consciously, instead of being overwhelmed, I'm going to choose to be empowered. And if I choose consciously, intentionally, to release that energy of being overwhelmed and lean into the energy of being empowered, then I can breathe. Then I can roll my shoulders back and I can say, sister, you got this. There's a lot of work to do, but every journey begins with the first step. And like the old saying goes, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Second best time is today. So let's get started. All right, let's summarize and wrap up for today. Remember, if I invest in myself through upgrading my communication skills, my life skills, and my leadership skills, what happens? Every area of my life improves. Quite literally, my whole life gets better because I get better. Remember, nobody is expecting us to master these concepts overnight, and we don't need to. Okay, these are tools to add to your arsenal as you grow. And your objective here is leading your family in the way it should go, the way you decide strategically you want your family to go. You are the Ashes Hyle. You are that woman of valor. This is your opportunity to literally define success for you and your family. Success, it's a very big buzzword. Even my company of coaching women is called Digging Deeper for Success. But it's a play on words because success, it means you're defining, not what the world is. You're not living based on what social media thinks success is, right? This is your definition, what you want from your life. That's the only piece of success. That's how you measure it. That's how you know if you have quote unquote arrived. Of course, there's no such thing as arriving. We're a work in progress. But what you want for yourself, what you believe your creator wants from you, and how you can best fulfill that mission with joy and with meaning and with passion, that is your definition of success. Okay? Now, we talked last week and we looked last week. We reviewed quickly again this concept of the Ashes Hyle, the woman of valor. Okay. Bottom line, what this means, what Ashes Hyle, this prototype, this beautiful benchmark of womanhood that we're all striving for as our ultimate role model. What it means, bottom line, is that you are not living life from the passenger seat. You are taking your job as a leader of your household very seriously. You're committed to learning the new skills and a new approach to life that empowers you to lead with passion, purpose, and joy. Every journey begins with a single step. We're not getting overwhelmed. Okay, that's a buzzword. We're not getting overwhelmed with the task. And we're not getting sucked into this microwave mentality of the world. I used to literally have to sit with some of my students and we would have a mantra and we would repeat it again and again and again. And I would say, repeat after me. I would literally make them raise their right hand and repeat after me. I will not be overwhelmed. I am choosing to be empowered. And we would go through, I am not, I am a champion. I am not mediocre, and we know that you can't even say not because the subconscious mind deletes the word not. So if I'm sitting around saying, I'm not mediocre, I'm not mediocre, I'm not mediocre, I'm not overwhelmed, I am not overwhelmed, guess what my brain is feeding into my subconscious more and more. Mediocre, overwhelmed, mediocre, overwhelmed. So you want to focus on the words you want instead. I am choosing to be empowered. I am excited. I have so much opportunity. I'm blessed. This is an incredible journey I'm embarking on. It's literally the journey of a lifetime, of your lifetime. It's your masterpiece. So I'm not getting sucked into the microwave mentality where I'm just going to skim the surface of everything and go, 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 quick, 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 busy, busy, always in a hurry. No, no, no. You, like we talked about last session, you are the crock pot mama. Slow and steady wins the race. Yes, sometimes you got to turn up that fire for a quick boil, and that's okay. But over the long haul, it's the long distance runner that wins. The work is with me. The work is with me. Say it with me. The work is with me. And at the end of the day, here's the most beautiful thing, actually. Your relationship with yourself improves. Think about it. Don't you want to love yourself? Okay, not because you finally arrived and hit the status you've been desperately looking for. Not because you got a promotion at work or a pay raise or the diploma on the wall or the marriage certificate or the debt-free status at the bank. Not because of any of those things, but because you are worthy and awesome just as you are. And because you should be able to love spending time with just yourself, feeling whole and complete. As you really deep dive into this journey of working on yourself, your whole world opens up. And remember, the most challenging and the most rewarding work you can ever do is the work you do on yourself. All right. So here is your mission, should you choose to accept it. Your digging deeper action items. Number one, you're going to pick one area of communication that you want to start focusing on. Okay, either learning more about communication or becoming more aware of communication in your own life. I gave you a list earlier. We talked about conflict resolution. We talked about active listening. We talked about crucial conversations, the art of apologies. Okay, pick one area of communication, or even if you just want to start reading about effective communication and learning about it. Okay, but pick something, one particular area that you would like to start focusing on. That's number one. Number two, pick one life skill that you feel you are missing in your current season of life right now that you would love to invest in developing. Okay, you're going to pick one. Now, this is just all about whatever you focus on grows. So as you just start to become aware of this one area, you may not be able to deep dive into it right now, but it's so interesting how, and this is a law of the universe. The minute I say, a yellow Honda, I start to see yellow Hondas everywhere, right? So same thing here. The minute that you pick a life skill that you really feel that you're missing and your life would be upgraded if you could develop the skill, just start to focus on it and just watch what you begin to manifest in your life and how these things start to appear. Remember, my friend, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So just by focusing on it and opening yourself up to it, you will create the most beautiful experiences for yourself without a lot of hard work. Okay, and then number three, you're going to find one book or podcast or social media channel on leadership that can help inspire you and elevate you, even just in terms of your simple daily awareness. Okay, this alone can be a huge catalyst for your growth. Okay, say it with me. The work is with me. And next time, my friends, I can't believe it, but it is already time for our grand finale. So next session, session 6, our topic is bringing it all together and maintaining your relationship superpowers for the long haul. I love you, my friend. See you next time. Bye for now.